Welcome to Elisha Space, a sanctuary for healing, growth, and authentic conversations. I'm your host, Elisha, counselor, author, and someone who believes that no wound is too deep for restoration. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to because it sits right at the intersection of trauma, creativity, and resilience. My guest is Dr. Ronda Wells. She's an author who knows what it means to walk through the fire and come out telling stories that bring healing. She just released a Christmas novella about a World War II soldier returning home with severe PTSD. Back when they didn't even call it PTSD, they called it battle fatigue. They called it shell shock. And most of the time, they called it nothing at all. Men were just expected to come home and be fine. But here's where this gets personal. Dr. Wells isn't just about writing about PTSD from a distance. Last year, she developed PTSD herself after a traumatic hospitalization. And what she learned about healing, including the powerful role that creative arts has played in having expression, has played in her trauma recovery, is something I believe will speak directly to someone listening right now. Whether you're carrying your own trauma quietly, whether you've been told to just get over it, or whether you've been searching for a way to heal that goes beyond talk therapy, this episode is for you. So before we begin, I want us to take a breath together. Breathe in with me. 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. And slowly release 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're in a safe space. Now let's get into it. Dr. Ronda Wells, welcome to Elisha Space.
Thank you.
I have so been looking forward to this conversation. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about who you are and what led you to your writing?
I'm a family practice physician by certification, and I worked in practice for about 3 years and then realized trying to have babies and raise small children, there was no such thing as part-time family practice. So I ended up going to another field called occupational medicine, which is clinic-based, where you go see the doctor if you're injured on the job or if you need a physical or drug screens. I did that for a while, and then a mentor from medical school called me right after my daughter was born and said, do you know how to use a computer? Well, yeah, we're talking 35 years ago. Yeah, kinda. She goes, well, I want you to come. Would you like to work for me like 1 day a week here at Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield? And I'm going to go, sure, I'll go try it. So I trained on their computer system while my daughter was in her screening. It was so cute because the nurses kept coming around to look at her. So anyway, and they all remember that's how I trained. So I started 1 day a week, and 5 years later, I ended up full-time as one of the medical directors at Anthem Blue Cross. It was just because they kept firing all the people over me. They kept merging and firing and merging, and I just kind of got left finally. But what it led to was a niche job that I still hold, and that is a transplant case manager with a program that actually takes solid organ transplants and bone marrow transplants out of their regular insurance system, moves them across country if they have to, wherever we need to go to get them a care. It's a specialty care network, so to speak, and we case manage those cases. And I work with the nurses that I worked with like 30 years ago. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I started writing because they wanted me to do medical policy. So I started doing medical, but what I really wanted to do was write fiction.
But it was a good outlet, right?
It is. I realized, it's taken me a long time to realize this, that when I write, I relax.
Right. Me too.
That's when I'm the most relaxed, is when I'm
Right.
sitting here writing fiction and doing all this imagination and stuff. So I had like 6 or 7 full drafts sitting on the shelf, and I was still trying to get traditional published. And I had been so close, so many times with agents, one thing or another. And this last time, what happened was the acquisitions editor said, yes, we want to buy this. The very next day, the company reorganized. She got fired, and there was no contract that ever materialized. At this point, I am done.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I I actually took a class with Peggy Sue Wells and on self-publishing, and I decided I was going to independently publish this story that I had in mind. It was based on an Indianapolis Christmas tradition, and go from there. So, and then I'm publishing the others that are on the shelf. So,
And
well,
just doing a little brief plug for you guys now.
yeah,
So we're part of, okay, I'm going to say it wrong, Author, Writer, Speaker Association.
ASA, yeah, the
Awesome.
association. Is it? No,
We're part
Advanced
of,
Speakers and Writers Association. I have trouble with it too, because we just were at NRB and we had our little badges and our little tags. I was like, what was it again? Oh yeah, Advanced Writers and Speakers Association.
I'm so used to saying ASA.
I know.
So us being part of ASA, Peggy Sue Wells is
She is another author that is prolifically published.
right.
I know her because she came here to Indiana. I think she lives out west, like Colorado or someplace like that. I don't know if she's in ASA or not, but she's in ACFW, which is American Christian Fiction Writers, and that's how I met her from there and from there. It's kind of cute because her first name is Peggy and mine is Rhonda. And we're both Wellses, so we're kind of like Peggy Sue and Help Me Rhonda. So
I didn't even know there was a American Christian fiction writer, so I have to check that out.
yes, it has been around for, man, how many? 25 years to 30? I joined right when they were American Christian Romance Writers. What happened was they were pulling out of, I was a member of RWA, which was Romance Writers of America, and they were pulling away from it because it was, honestly, even the magazine was getting a little offensive for me as a Christian to
Mhm.
read some of this, like how to write sex scenes, erotica. And I'm like, I'm not writing that. So they pulled away and formed this organization. And then within about a year or two, I was at the conference, my first conference. They renamed themselves to American Christian Fiction Writers because they didn't want to drive the guys away. I've done that ever since. And I'm so happy to say I did get chosen to present this year, finally for the first time at the ACFW conference. So
That's
I'm
pretty
I'm
cool.
thrilled. Yes. So
That's
looking
pretty
forward to
cool.
it.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So you carry a lot of hats. You're an author. You are, someone with a medical background. How do all these pieces fit together in your story?
Somebody asked me, why did you make Jack with PTSD? And I realized what happened just as you were talking, that I had written most of the story for the Christmas Cherub prior to being hospitalized for pneumonia. And I needed the rest of the story. I had probably had about 30,000 words originally anyway. I was working on a screenplay, and my Hallmark mentor said, if you've got a novella, you'd be better off publishing it because Hallmark and others they like having, IP behind the screenplays. So, well, I can do that. And it'll be a good experience for me. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of wrongs. I stepped in every hole. You can do it wrong. I did it and wasted some money. But then again, you learn. So, but that's when the PTSD occurred because of the hospitalization. As a doctor, I don't like hospitals. I've had 16 surgeries,
Wow.
unfortunately, in my lifetime, 5 of which were in the last 5 years. And so I think the problem is because I know what can go wrong. And honestly, this time, that's kind of what happened. We had a good local hospital. It used to be good. And what happened was the nurses were not trained well at all. I had
Oh
2
my
RNs
gosh.
that were good, and everybody else was basically a temporary hire. Probably. Some of them didn't speak English that well. I got really upset with one nurse. She was like, and she was facing away from me with a double mask on her face because it was in the flu epidemic. And I couldn't hear her. Plus, I have ringing in my ears. I couldn't hear her that well anyway. And of course, the noise is in the room is going everywhere. And I asked her to repeat it, and she got mad at me. And I thought, lady,
Right.
I really can't hear you. Think about where you are and where you're standing. You're talking away from me and all. And I think she thought it was because English wasn't her first language. I wasn't it at all. I just simply could not hear. So what happened was the venous accent. My veins are kind of bad anyway, and they just kept sticking me. And I think I had 20 IV sticks in about 8 days. And I kept telling him, I'm an old blood banker. I know how to do IVs. I was trained to do IVs at a major city hospital. I trained other people to do it. And I kept telling them, don't do that. But they went ahead and did it. And then one of them jabbed a nerve.
That sounds so painful.
It was very painful. And it still bothers me a little. And then you have the added thing that I had a blood clot go to my lungs while I'm there. They never quite figured out where it came from. So, it just like, I just get me out of here before I die, basically. I was really getting concerned. Luckily, the pneumonia was probably just viral. They didn't think it was bacterial, so it did respond. But I was on oxygen for at least probably a couple months when I got home. I was so weak. I could not do anything other than walk down the hall. And I had gotten a jigsaw puzzle for Christmas, and I could put one piece or two pieces in, and then
Mhm.
I'd have to walk back to the room and lay down. So I was weak. I was at my weakest I've ever been. And well, you start praying, believe me, you start praying with this one. And so the pulmonologist, my lung doctor, said, it's going to take 6 months to get over this. I'm like, 6 months, he was right. It took a full 6 months. And then, of course, I broke my foot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I just stepped off a curb wrong. I really just sprained it. That's what it felt like. But it just kept getting worse. I had broken a small bone. And of course, there were tendons attached to that bone. And so I had foot surgery the day after Christmas. I'm out of the cast, and tomorrow is the day free. I think I'm just in an elastic brace from here on out. So I took the clunky boot to the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville last week, and it did not go well. So I just went back to my regular ankle splint. But it did leave me. I didn't realize I'd had it until I related what had happened to my rheumatologist. And I mean, I saw her probably just like a week or two after I got out of the hospital, and she looked at me. She goes, "You've got PTSD." I'm like, "What? Me?
Mhm.
What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh, no, no, it's a real thing. You had a bad hospitalization. You were scared." I said, "Yeah, I was scared." And I was very frustrated. Nobody was listening to me as a patient. And they kept taking the blood pressure wrong, and it hurt because 'cause they've got a muscle disease. It's just like they just did not listen. And I thought, if they don't listen to me as a doctor, what are they doing to the regular patients?
Right.
Um, yeah, so I got over it, healing and, prayer and certainly reading. And so the joke of it all is, when you said that, I realized that's about when I started writing the rest of the novel, because it was due in July. We were gonna launch in July for Christmas in July. It was originally supposed to be at Christmas, but that didn't happen. And I very quickly wrote the rest of the novel, and I realize now that's probably why I put the PTSD in. I gave him battle fatigue. I was going to give him a wound, and I just poured right out. So I'm sure that's what happened. So
I bet it was even doing that was kind of therapeutic anyway, using that.
probably, yeah, I had to read a lot about it, do a lot with it, and I realized, oh, yeah. And I was molested by an uncle when I was 8 years old. It was one of my
Mhm.
mom's brothers.
Mhm.
And I've been working on a memoir about her because I wanted to find out what happened with her childhood. She was orphaned, and she had all these stories. And when I started putting things together, I thought, some of these stories don't add up. Where was she when this happened? And then I started doing more and more investigations, and I realized that her older brother had probably raped her when she was 7 years old. And that was the trauma of her life, and explained her claustrophobia and her anxiety. Just explained everything. And so, of course, there was nothing about counseling and healing back then.
Mhm.
So, you
Except
know
to point out to you something's wrong with you. Right.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. And she
Right.
was so high functioning, so smart. She was a nurse. That's how she gave back. I mean, she was a nurse for 45 years, and a good one, which is why I know bad nurses.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're not my mother. But anyway, so, I had it as a child. I remember probably took me a year before I didn't think about it daily. It was shameful. Mom overheard me telling another girl one time, "Oh, we don't talk about that
Mm.
outside the family." And I thought, "Oh." So I later learned, no, that's the wrong thing. She was probably told that, I would imagine. And I thought, "No, no, no. You've got to, you know, let it be known. You've got to talk about it. You need that's therapeutic to let people know what happened to you." And I even in the memoir, I know that it really was incest, because it
Right.
was a blood uncle, and it carries such a deeper taint that it just keeps bubbling in the back of your head. Maybe it'll go 3 years, but something will trigger it, and it bubbles up again, and you remember it. So, especially doing this book, it's brought a lot of it back, writing the book and going down there and seeing
Mhm.
things one thing or another. But when I finally put it together, I think that this particular uncle was disabled mentally. He did not have I remember him just being able to sign an X. He didn't know how to spell his name. He had not completed school. So what happened was I found that we went down there with my mom last time we were down there before these two uncles died. And I came around the room and I realized he was what they call microcephalic. His skull was too small, which didn't allow him to have brain developments. He was never going to be normal. He was always going to be slow. And that just blew me out of the water. So I thought, oh, I have to forgive this guy.
Mhm.
And then I realized, investigating more with my mom, my dad had said her brothers molested her. Finally, I realized I think I know what happened. Is this older brother was a sociopath. He was a murderer, a rapist, and he got out of prison. She was the only female in the household because her mom was dead by then. And her dad was sick with TB. So I think what happened was he used this brother, the slow one, who better than to help him taunt, and they put a pillow over her face, they smothered her, while all this was going on, and I'm thinking because it was really interesting because he did to me what was done to her at almost exactly the same age, and if you look at the photos of us at that age, we're like carbon copies. So I think he was just he was abused as well
Mhm.
by doing that and stuff, but unfortunately, he did become a serial molester, so no, I don't think he ever went to jail for it, but everybody in the family knew about it. So,
So I have a couple questions. One
yes.
question is, have you found that through your research and preparing to write in the creative space
Yeah.
around these things, have you found that to be healing? And then the other question is, what do you want people to understand about this with these different layers of PTSD and the different types of traumas when they're reading your books?
It's complex, for one thing. Like you just pointed out, the very many layers. It manifests in multiple different ways. I
Mhm.
think the biggest problem with the soldier was it was originally called shell shock, and that came out of World War II, which makes sense. You've got, this concussion, you've got a physical attack, which would affect the brain, almost like giving you a concussion. And these guys would just stop. They'd just freeze because, the brain just shut down as a protective mechanism. The horror of the trenches and the whole thing. So it got called shell shock, which it probably was. But by the time we're doing World War II, there are no trenches and you could be in a foxhole, but you might not be around, shells exploding or anything like that. But you may just see, a buddy killed or whatever. And you've got this PTSD. So they had to reframe what they were thinking about and call it battle fatigue. Because what happened was these guys just, and if anybody's ever seen the original movie of Patton, where the guy Patton slaps, I really think, no joke, he did the biggest favor to psychiatry in the army was Patton slapping a soldier who had battle fatigue PTSD, a young one.
Mhm.
Patton got disciplined for it, and it brought up the point that he wasn't a coward. It was a mental thing that had happened to him. It was psychiatric and it had to be treated. So they learned that what they should do is pull him away from the battle. If it was a mild case, they could give him rest, give him fluids, give him food, to kind of tank him back up. And if
Mhm.
they felt like it, they could immediately go back to the battle. That was probably, it's like getting back on the horse after falling off the horse.
Right.
They
Right.
realized they should do that. The problem was the guys that didn't recover. And so those had to be sent to military hospitals. And a lot of it was interesting. A lot of the early research was done in the British psychiatric hospitals. And that's where my character does end up. But they were trying things. They were trying medications, they were trying therapies, they were trying psychotherapy. And so, and the thing about it is it manifests differently. It looks different for every person. You might have an anxiety disorder, or you might be depressed, or you might have both. Some people went into what they call catatonia, which is just a total shutdown, looking at the wall. I can't do anything. I won't talk to you. I can't eat it. So that's very rare. More commonly, you see the anxiety, depression acting out, angry outbursts, which is what I gave to my character, very common. And we still see it. We're still seeing our soldiers come back. You can't fight a war without being traumatized. I mean, that's just what war does.
Right.
So recognizing it now, at least the Army, I noticed the Army is interestingly trying a nerve block of the big nerve in the neck that goes to the arm and have found some success with that. And I was like, how in the world? Anatomically, I don't know, but hey, if it works, it works, you know?
Right.
So they are still working at trying to fix this, But starting in World War II, there was a lot of documentation. There was documentation in World War I, but boy, I found a ton of stuff in World War II. And you can find, first person reports of what happened. A lot of wives got black eyes in the middle of the night, you know. And my dad actually had a friend, a very good friend, who was actually on the Bataan Death March. And he worked with him at Curtis Publishing Company. They were publishing the Saturday Evening Post. They were both salesmen. This friend stayed with him in a hotel room, and anytime a plane would go over, and would go out of the bed and hit the deck. And Dad's like, "What? What?" And it was because of what had happened. Every time they hear a plane, they had to dive. So he was definitely still having some PTSD from World War II,
Hmm.
even into the early 60s, 1960s. So
So given what you'd been through, and then you're writing of the book and you're doing the studies, was any of this triggering?
yeah, I would say doing the research for my mom's memoir brought a lot back, brought a lot more back. So I think about it a lot more. Luckily, though, I am thinking about it with a balanced approach. Yeah, I did
Okay.
have to get mom had dementia for about 15 years. And so that was tough. I mean, honestly, I probably had PTSD from that more than anything. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
it's like
Right.
my beautiful husband says he's the most patient, God fearing man in the world. And he just said, you can only hear the same question 400 times before you get a little irritated. Yeah, amen. So, yeah, the other thing I started writing was devotionals. So,
Okay.
also gave me an opportunity to write some devotionals online. I started getting some ideas, and so I submitted them. And then now I was invited to I met one of the editors at the Blue Ridge Writers Conference,
Mhm.
and I'm writing for CrossMap. They're daytime devotionals and nighttime prayers. I have a regular once a month devotional that I submit, and I'm on that platform as well. So it gives me a little bit more exposure. It's a bigger platform. But a lot of it comes out in the writing. And I do think that writing about it helps. And I don't think it has to be any kind of special writing. I think just the act of putting a pen to paper can be an outlet. So I did get counseling for 2 years, right before my mom died, because I was just ready to blow. I thought,
Right.
I'm gonna have a stroke. I got high blood pressure anyway. I've got to talk to somebody. It was so funny. She asked one question, and I talked for an hour, and she just sat there and nodded. When we got to the end, she goes, "You had a lot to get off your chest." Yeah, I did. So
So,
yeah,
how did your faith play in
it's huge. I mean, so no joke. I mean, I grew up in a Christian household. My dad was a preacher. So I remember, knowing God at the age of 2. No joke. I never didn't know God. So that's a huge advantage, I'm sure, than people that grow up and they have no clue who Jesus is and don't know the Bible and don't know the Bible stories. But honestly, my favorite book as a kid was my Bible story book. And I read those stories over and over and over again. I swear that's one reason I became a writer was all of those stories were just, inspiring. So
something I find very interesting is that whenever I'm going through something, I honestly wonder to myself, like sometimes, like how do people get through this without Jesus?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think they do well. There was a point where my mom had her major stroke while my dad was in hospice.
Hmm.
And so I remember running to the facility because I was called. It was one of those episodes where I had to follow the ambulance to the ER or something or another. And I remember being so stressed in the car. I got to get to the ER for mom, but what are we going to do about dad? And I realized, it is a demonic attack. It's coming from the other side. And I knew that. And I just screamed out loud, I will not yield.
Hmm.
Satan, I will not yield. I screamed it several times. I will not yield. And somehow that helped
Hmm.
because I basically told him off, said, get away because none of this is going to work on me. And I do think things got better after that. So
Okay, well that's good.
sometimes you have to shout at Satan.
It always it helps.
Yeah,
It
it
helps.
really did.
If somebody is going through a difficult time and they feel like God's abandoned them through their PTSD or their trauma, you know, what would you say to them?
Go to the word. Go to the word every time. I would start with Bible study, things that you're familiar with, and the Psalms. I think are probably in Lamentations. Proverbs contains some of the greatest wisdom in the world. I mean, the Psalms are laments. I mean, if you look at some of
Right.
them, they are David is in a very dark place when he writes some of these Psalms, as were some of the other
But
Psalms.
if you think about it, David was, like, in a state of PTSD since he was a little kid,
Well, probably so, good thought. I mean, he
because,
had
like,
a
throwing,
giant
the audience
attacking a
you know what I'm
baby
trying with
bear,
what happened with
a lion.
Goliath, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
Then
then
he
he
walked
faces
over,
the
cut his head
giant.
off. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
a lot for a little kid.
a lot. Yeah. Yeah, and then Saul is trying to kill him. He's
Right,
told to play the harp for Saul the liar, and he's playing, making music, and then the king throws his spear on him. I mean, that had to have been traumatic. And so, yeah, he did have a lot of trauma, which probably explains maybe some of his later, you know,
choices. Right.
yeah, choices. Um, Probably wasn't the best parent in the world. He certainly wasn't the best husband. But
Mm-mm.
it's interesting that with Bathsheba, I think maybe she must have been his soulmate. He's a murderer. He's a
Right,
first-degree murderer, and
right.
he knows this. And boy, I think Nathan I would have loved to have been there when Nathan said, "You are the man who took
Right,
the
when you
sheep."
call him to the carpet, right?
Yeah, and I think David says fell on his knees, and he realized, "I gotta repent." And it says that David is a man after God's own heart. So as you pointed out, there's nothing that can't be forgiven. I
Right.
truly believe if Judas had repented,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that he would have been.
Right, and he would have been received by the church. I mean, if we can, receive Saul, we can definitely receive Judas, you know?
Exactly, exactly. But I think Judas maybe didn't have the faith.
Right,
We don't really know if he believed, honestly. I mean, he held the purse, he went around and did stuff, so we don't really know who Judas was before he became, was he a scam artist that
right,
decided to
right.
steal from this group of
True,
people? I don't know.
true.
We don't know.
In your studies and in my what I see in my practice is that when people are dealing with trauma and they have PTSD around it, that there's a lot of shame, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, I felt so ashamed after the molestation. I mean, I did the right thing. I immediately ran and told my mom. And she oh, man, she came out of that bed like a rocket and said and the best thing she ever did, she grabbed me by the shoulders and she said, "This is not your fault." So and off she took, and then by the next morning, my uncle was gone, so it turned out she marched him down to the bus station in our small town, put him on a bus, and sent him back to Kentucky. So and I always asked him, "Why did you do that? He should have been arrested." Later on, I'm working with a child abuse counsel for 10 years, obviously out of my own experience drove my desire to do that. And she said, "I was afraid your father would kill him if he found out, so I sent him back." I was like, "Okay,
Right.
probably a good plan, mom."
The other thing too about it too, Rhonda, is that the laws were different back then.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there was no you're right. I don't think they would have filed a case. Certainly what
Wow.
I know of child abuse and stuff like that, they wouldn't have, it was inappropriate touching on his part, trying to, touch me, but I got away from him. Uh, and it leaves you with a shock, and like I said, it just leaves you with this shamefulness, and what happened to me, I call it minor, I know it was incest, but even just minor things can leave, a deep mark, and I had patients who had been incested by their fathers for 16 years.
Right.
I'd had some really bad cases, and they were definitely, damaged far more psychically than I was. So, but it's still there. It's always there. The shame went away with time, but the memory of that event is still like kind of, yeah.
What does restoring you look like in this season, considering all the things you've been through, which
Well,
came
let's
from
see.
this book?
Hopefully 2026 will be a better year and I won't catch the flu.
That'll help.
That'll help. Let's see. I also broke a tooth in the midst of all this, and it
Oh my gosh.
had breaks. So I had all these dental appointments, and you just wouldn't believe what I had to do to try and keep this tooth. And then, of course, I had the foot. So hopefully 2026 will be injury and disease free.
Woohoo!
And I'm releasing a contemporary romance in June, one off the shelf called Harvest of Hope. And it is
Love
about
that
hope.
name.
And I just got the edits back from the editor, and the cover just came back from the designer. Hannah Linder just knocked it out of the park again with this cover. I mean, I love the cover on this one. She did the Christmas cherub, and it is,
My gosh, I love
yeah,
it.
wasn't that
Yes,
great? She just did a
yes.
phenomenal job with that. Like I said, it's based on we do actually have a cherub that goes on a clock in Indianapolis. I just wove a fictional story around how it got created and everything. But and no, it doesn't have a magical wink that can tell true love, but I gave that to it. So, but it goes out every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And even though the store that originally put it up there is no longer in existence, the city now owns the clock and the cherub, and we still maintain the tradition. So, that's kind of where it came from. But anyway, but yeah, so the cover's ready for Harvest of Hope, and then there will be a second Christmas cherub book. I'm working
Awesome.
on it. Yeah. I was told by my readers and my first book club people, like, "Oh, you are writing a next one." I was, "Oh, well, really? I didn't know." She goes, "No, you are." So working on it.
Don't you love it when people love what you write so much? They're like, "Okay, we're"
Yeah, I was blown away. These women all, "We love it. We love your characters." Like, honestly, it was embarrassing. A couple times I think they knew the book better than I did. They mentioned something and I had to think for a second. Oh, yeah, okay. The dumbest thing I did though was and I'm not alone in this. 5 of us missed it. In the first edition, if you will, the villainess actually was in the wedding ceremony.
Mhm.
She wasn't supposed to be. It was don't ever start 2 characters with the same letter. I broke the rule. And
Okay.
that's what happened, that she ended up in the, wedding ceremony. It has been fixed on Ingram, and I'm getting ready to fix it on Amazon, but I didn't feel bad because 4 other people missed it as well as I did, so it actually took my husband's cousin, who was a retired teacher. She said, "Why was Gloria in the wedding ceremony?" He was like, "What?"
What I found is that when I'm writing and the book launches and people are reading the book,
Yeah,
I'm, like, already into the other books. Like
I am
like,
too. Yeah, I'm
it
already
so
moving
when
on.
people
Yeah,
I have to remember that people are just beginning their journey
with the story. Yeah,
versus I'm already over here.
right. That's exactly where I was, I was already I gotta have surgery the day after Christmas, and
Mhm.
that was one thing that happened. I wasn't able to launch the book like I wanted to. We launched in July, but we were gonna do a more call it a soft launch in July and then do a hard launch in October, and that's when I broke my foot. So, I was limping around. So, it took weeks to figure out what had happened with X-rays, and then it took, like, 3 weeks to get the MRI scheduled, and one thing or another, and then it took another 3 weeks to get the surgery scheduled, and so by then I was at the end of the year. So I was planning on going out to all the local libraries, local independent bookstores. I did get a signing at Barnes& and Noble that went really well, the Saturday before Christmas, and then the Indianapolis Historical Society had a big book fair, and boy, they loved this book because no joke, their ornament of the year was the clock this year, the historic Ellis Ayres clock.
That's all.
So they were thrilled and they put this book up with it. I was very happy that they helped me as much as they did. So, but other things got canceled because of weather and I couldn't go and I couldn't walk. So I'm actually starting now. I've got my list of libraries. I'm going out with my little media sheet and we're going at it again because the next one's coming. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
How can somebody get in contact with you? How can people have access to your book?
You can go to my website, which will be in the notes, rondawellsbooks.com. The other way is if you're an author, I also help other authors with their medical stuff. I have a whole website dedicated to that called Novel Malpractice.
Yes,
And so you can get to me that way as well. You can email me through either one of those. And then of course, with the devotionals, I can't remember what email they've got up there. They've got comment sections on the devotionals where, I think you could probably put something up, but I hope they're helping people. I really do. You don't get a lot of feedback on those, but you figure out if you just help one person, it's enough. That's what
gosh,
God intends. All this is whatever God intends. So
right, right. What's one thing you want someone listening today to carry with them, especially if they're silently struggling with trauma?
hope is always there.
Yes, I love that. Hope is everything, right?
It really is. Yeah.
It really
People
is.
talk about faith and all, but what the faith gives you is hope.
Yes.
That's yeah, that's what's so important about faith, is it's giving you the hope, you know, of the ever after.
Wow. I just want to thank you not only for your
No,
time today, but for your transparency with everything that you shared. It's so brave to share these different stories that you're telling, that you're sharing on the show. It takes real courage, because not everybody can come out and say all these things that happen, as well as talk about how you're healing. Like, you're still going through your healing journey, but you are healing and how you've used your creativity to do that. I just think that's amazing.
absolutely.
So, audience, if today's conversation resonated with you, I want you to do three things. First, I want you to go to Dr. Ronda Wells' work. Her Christmas novella is available now, and you can find it at rondawellsbooks.com. And if you want to learn more about her story, visit novelmalpractice.com because that also helps with the creative practice as far as that goes. And I'll have the links in the description also. Second, if the episode spoke to something that you've been carrying, you don't have to carry it alone. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose healing starts with pressing play. And then third, subscribe to Elisha Space and turn on notifications so you never miss a conversation. We're here every week building a community of people who are choosing healing over hiding.